Hi everyone. As a coach and a teacher, I sometimes see my learners do some silly things which are unexplained or otherwise random. And I thought I'd share this as a curious coaching experience for those who might find themselves in the same situation, or for those who are self-taught and want to learn from someone else's mistakes. So one of our members at the club has recently gotten into archery and got himself a bow, second-hand bow, similar to this one, basic takedown recurve, bought used off eBay, I think, and comes with sight and some accessories and stuff. So he has a kit to use. And he's been making pretty good progress over the last couple of months under my guidance, and he's spending quite a bit of time practicing by himself. So he's on the right pathway to becoming a good archer. Now, in archery, especially as a coach, you'll see certain personality traits and types of archers who turn up and learn from you. And this guy is kind of a bit overly keen sometimes, in that he pushes his limits, or he pushes his capabilities without really knowing what he can do. And this is shown mostly in his tendency to shoot at a longer distance than what he's actually comfortable with. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. If you want to challenge yourself, then that's not a bad thing. But when you don't have the fundamentals or the basics to shoot even at 10 meters, and you shouldn't really go for 20, 30 or 40 meters. So there's no real benefit to spraying the target at 30 meters when you could and should be learning fundamentals at 10 meters. Anyway, the story isn't about that. So we're having a casual 10 meter practice. I finished my shooting, he's doing his shooting, and he's getting some really good groupings at 10 meters. So it's a big target face, 10 meters, not a huge deal, but it's a great confidence boost for someone who is learning. So he was hitting all golds, getting in the 10 ring and the X ring. He was doing really well. And remember, he's using one of these bows with a sight, so there's not much to help him. And he's doing really well. So I thought, you know what, it's time to put a benchmark down. Let's actually count our score, measure how good we are today, and use that to measure our progress to next session. And he liked the idea. He wanted to push himself, so he shot a practice round. And it was horrible. He went from hitting like all golds and X's at 10 meters, but still, he's gone from hitting like groupings this size to spraying everywhere on target and nearly missing the whole thing at 10 meters. Now, I understand that sometimes when you're scoring, you put yourself under pressure, you psych yourself out, and then your form and your score collapses. That's a fairly normal thing for many people. But it's only 10 meters. Like, you don't go from like all gold to no gold in like 1 minute. Like something was really odd, and he didn't know why, and I didn't know why. Like, everything looked the same, and I just couldn't figure out what on earth happened in those 2 minutes when they decided to go from practice to scoring. What actually happened was that he kind of secretly changed finger tabs between the end. So when we went from the practice to the benchmark, he used a different finger tab. Because he has two finger tabs. One which isn't his, he borrowed off somebody else because he didn't have one. Then he bought one a few weeks ago, and he started using that, but he wasn't used to it yet. So he was shooting excellently with the old finger tab, and he was shooting terribly with a new finger tab. Now, this alone is not abnormal. Finger tabs are quite personal, so if you don't have a tab which fits you perfectly, or you don't find completely comfortable with the shape of your hand or the way the leather feels, it can really affect your shot. But it wasn't so much that he changed finger tabs. It's more like he secretly did so. Like, he didn't tell anybody that he changed finger tabs. And this is one of those coaching annoyances, or coaching nightmares, when your learners change random things without telling you. Now, of course, we're not here to dictate what you should and shouldn't do with your bow and your technique. We're here to guide you. So if you want to do other things, or you know better, then all the more power to you. But like, communication is very important. This guy wasn't being malicious. He wasn't being like arrogant and a smart ass. He thought it was a good idea to get used to the new tab that he had without showing us or showing me what the tab was. And when he was struggling, as a coach, I'm like, what? Why? What's happening? Like, what do we normally do? Because nothing looked wrong. And it was just one of those small things which could have been unexplained until we just randomly mentioned his finger tab didn't feel right. I'm like, well, man, that's not your tab. Where's your other tab? So it's like you turn away, you turn back, and there's a new site or a new rest or a new tab or something. This is actually surprisingly common with learners, more so with self-taught learners, which makes sense. You have no guidance, so you tend to kind of try new things. But it's just so like surprising and like out of nowhere for a coach when your student or your learner turns up and it's like a new bow out of nowhere. Anyway, so back to the point of the finger tab. While it's a very small thing, like I said before, it is a very personalized piece of equipment, and if it doesn't fit you right, it won't work well for you. And you might wonder, how does a piece of leather severely affect someone so much they can't hit a target at 10 meters? I actually tried the tab. What tab it was doesn't matter. It's actually a good brand, good tab. I do recommend it myself, but what he bought didn't quite fit him. This is the sort of thing where you would have to trim down the excess leather and get used to the softness or the thickness of the leather before you really get into using it. So I tried using it myself. I said, don't blame your tools. But when he was having a break, I borrowed his tab, started shooting it, and I felt what he felt. Again, important as a coach that you actually go through the mindset of the learner. I don't have it here right now, but when I was pulling back, I anchored and I couldn't anchor. I actually couldn't get to my anchor point. And the reason being was that the shape of the leather was cutting into my jaw. So naturally, I felt uncomfortable. I would anchor differently. So instead of having a very tight anchor, I actually kind of go loose and kind of go, and that's more like niggling feeling in the corner of your chin here or your jaw over here ruined the shot process. I actually couldn't shoot normally, and the same thing that he went through, I went through, and I'm the experienced coach trying to hit a 10-meter target. I could shoot okay, better than he could, obviously, but it didn't feel right, and I just couldn't shoot as smoothly and as accurately because this thing was jabbing me in the bottom of my chin. So that was something which, from experience, I knew could happen, I knew would happen, but if he didn't just randomly tell me that he had a new tab, I wouldn't have known. So the takeaway from this little video is that, well, if you are going to progress in archery, you should have a purpose to everything that you do, especially in buying equipment. When you decide to change something, whether it's a different set of limbs, or a different riser, a new sight or something, try to think of why you are changing things. It's okay to try new things and to experiment, that's fine. But if you're working with a coach, it's really important that you communicate with your coach what you intend to do, maybe get some insight or recommendations on whether you should or shouldn't get certain things, because ultimately you only have like yourself to blame if you find yourself regressing. And a lot of people won't actually understand why their scores drop, but when you go back through your archery log or your progress, you realize, oh yeah, I changed a few things. And that's why in some of my practice videos, I recommend you keep an archery log. If you're serious about training, then write down the things you do. Write down your technique, write down your focus, write down your equipment. So when you make certain changes to certain things, you can go back and recall what you had, which setting you had, which knocking point placement you use, which knock you use, because it's very easy for us to swap things out and change things around just spontaneously to make it work there and then. But when we come back next week, we've forgotten what we actually did. So yeah, keep track of the things that you do. If you change anything, try to keep note of what you've changed. And if you're working with a coach, then communicate with your coach and tell them what you intend to do or what you've changed, and be open-minded about whether things actually work or not. Because again, we have the same problems as other sports and other hobbies where you have the sunk cost problem. You spent money on a piece of equipment, you want to make it work, even though it clearly isn't working for you. Anyway, that's my brief little tip video. Hope that helped you. For those who are training in archery and for those who are getting into archery, don't be afraid of this. Feel free to experiment, get what you want. But remember, nothing is a magic bullet. Nothing automatically fixes all your problems. Some things do work better than others. And in most cases, it is very much to the individual, and there is no like one good piece of equipment which suits everybody. So with that said, hope that helps you. This is NUSensei. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.